The massive dining hall of the Galactic Confederation battlecruiser hummed with the chatter of 100 different alien species. Metal tables stretched across the room, each filled with soldiers from worlds so different they looked like they came from different universes. Bright overhead lights cast a harsh glow on scaled, furry, and crystalline skin, a living mosaic of galactic diversity. Jae-wook sat among his fellow soldiers, his six-fingered hand wrapped around a thermal mug of steaming blue liquid. He was a veteran of the Confederation's military, with silver markings on his deep green uniform that showed he had seen more combat zones than most. Around him, his unit discussed the upcoming mission with a mix of boredom and casual arrogance. "Another routine patrol," growled Kraltex, a massive reptilian soldier whose scales shifted colored when he was annoyed. "Nothing ever happens on these outer rim assignments." A crystalline being named Shilera clinked her transparent fingers against her drinking vessel. "At least it's better than being stuck in another ground war," she responded, her voice a series of musical tones that translated perfectly through the universal communication devices everyone wore. Their conversation drifted to the latest rumors circulating through the Confederation's military ranks. Humans had been slowly entering the galactic stage, but most soldiers viewed them as a joke. They were seen as a young, primitive species, barely out of their own solar system, with primitive technology and no real understanding of advanced interstellar politics. "I heard they're sending a human to our unit," said Mictal, a four-armed soldier whose skin rippled with patterns of communication. His tone suggested he found the idea ridiculous. "Can you imagine? What could a human possibly contribute?" Laughter erupted around the table. Jae-wook remained quiet, watching the others. He had learned long ago that mockery often came before surprise in military life. Something about the way the others spoke made him slightly uncomfortable, though he couldn't explain why. The mess hall's massive view screen flickered, showing star charts and mission briefings. Outside the thick, armored windows, endless space stretched out, a black canvas dotted with distant stars and the occasional glimmer of passing ships. The Confederation's fleet was massive, a collection of technological miracles that had maintained peace, or at least controlled conflict, across multiple star systems. "Humans are barely more than animals," Kraltex continued, his scaled head turning to emphasize his point. "They haven't even mastered full genetic engineering. They still rely on natural reproduction. Can you believe that?" More laughter, more dismissal. Jae-wook took another sip of his drink. Something nagged at the back of his mind. He had seen enough in his years of service to know that underestimating any species was a dangerous mistake. But he kept his thoughts to himself, watching and listening. Little did they know that their world was about to change. The human who would join their unit was not what anyone expected. David Kim was coming, and with him, a series of revelations that would shake the very foundations of their understanding of warfare, survival, and what it meant to be truly dangerous. As the ship continued its steady course through the vast emptiness of space, conversations continued. Jokes were made, predictions were shared, and not a single soldier in that room had any idea how wrong they were about humans. Not yet. The ship's docking bay was always busy, but today it felt different. Jae-wook stood among his unit, watching as new personnel arrived for their mission. Massive loading doors slid open with a low mechanical hum, revealing a stream of incoming soldiers from various planets and colonies. Most looked exactly as expected: bulky creatures with extra limbs, tall beings with translucent skin, robotic units with complex sensor arrays. But then he saw something that made several soldiers around him chuckle quietly. A human walked in. David Kim looked ordinary. Maybe that was what made him stand out. He was neither tall nor short, neither muscular nor weak. Medium height, average build, dark hair cut short. Simple gray military uniform, pressed and clean. His eyes, however, were different. They scanned the room with a calm, calculating precision that seemed out of place with his otherwise unremarkable appearance. Another human, Mkittle whispered to Kraltex. I bet he'll last maybe 2 missions before washing out. Kraltex's scales shifted to a mocking shade of yellow-green. Humans are good at manual labor. Maybe he'll be useful for carrying equipment. Jay-Wook said nothing. He kept watching David, noticing how the human moved. Each step was deliberate, each movement calculated. There was a quietness to him that felt different from the boastful swagger of most new recruits. The unit's commander, a massive crystalline being named Director Vor, stepped forward to introduce the new team members. His body refracted light in complex patterns, a language of color that communicated emotion as much as words. Soldier David Kim, the director announced, transferred from Earth Special Operations, specialized training in multi-environmental combat and advanced tactical strategies. A ripple of quiet laughter went through the alien soldiers. Specialized. Humans? It seemed like a joke. David stood perfectly still. No reaction. No anger. No embarrassment. Just calm attention. Jay-Wook found himself studying the human more closely. Something about David's stillness was unusual. Most young soldiers fidgeted. Most new recruits looked nervous or tried to look tough. David just existed, like a quiet piece of machinery waiting to be activated. The initial processing continued. Equipment was distributed. Assignments were given. David received his gear with the same calm efficiency he had walked in with. No extra movements. No wasted energy. You'll be assigned to secondary tactical support, Director Vor told David. The human simply nodded. Any questions? No, sir, David responded. His voice was clear, direct. No accent that betrayed nervousness or uncertainty. As the other soldiers continued their chatter and jokes, Jay-Wook kept watching. Something about this human was different. Something felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on what exactly made David seem so strange. Little did they know that David Kim was about to change everything they thought they knew about humans, about warfare, about survival. The ship hummed around them, a massive machine carrying soldiers who had no idea how much their world was about to change. And at the center of that coming storm was one unremarkable-looking human who was anything but ordinary. Darkness swallowed the alien landscape. Sharp rocks cut like knife edges against the metallic ground. 3 moons hung in the sky, casting strange blue-green shadows across the battlefield. This was Sector 7 Delta, a contested zone that had seen more battles than any single planet should. The attack came without warning. Enemy ships dropped from hyperspace like silent daggers. The Ketheri, a ruthless species known for destroying entire planetary systems, had found them. Their ships were nightmare machines, black as deep space, weapons that could slice through standard shields like paper. Incoming, shouted Kraltex, his scaled body already moving into defensive position. Jay-Wook watched as the first wave of enemy ships began their attack run. Standard Confederation tactics would be to create a defensive line, wait for orders, and respond systematically. But something unexpected happened. David Kim moved. Not like the other soldiers. Not with panic or confusion. He moved with a cold, calculated precision that seemed to bend the very chaos of battle to his will. Secondary team, take defensive position Delta. David's voice cut through the comm system. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Mkittle, who had previously mocked David, found himself automatically following the instruction. His 4 arms moved weapons into position before he even realized what was happening. The human wasn't just giving orders. He was predicting the enemy's movements. Where other soldiers saw chaos, David saw patterns. He directed the unit like a chess master, moving them not to where the enemy was, but to where the enemy would be. Alien soldiers who moments ago had laughed at him now moved with a precision they had never shown before. Kraltex watched in disbelief as David used the terrain. Rocks that seemed like obstacles became perfect defensive positions. Shadows became weapons. The human transformed the battlefield itself into a strategic advantage. The Ketheri didn't just lose. They were systematically dismantled. One enemy ship tried a desperate final run. Most units would have panicked. David calculated its trajectory in seconds. Mictal, adjust plasma cannons by 17.3 degrees. Kraltex, prepare secondary magnetic disruption field. The ship exploded before it could complete its attack run. Silence fell over the battlefield. Jay-Wook approached David. How did you do that? The human simply looked at him. No pride, no excitement, just calm efficiency. Patterns, David said simply. Every system has patterns. Every enemy has a strategy. You just have to see it. Around them, alien soldiers stared. The human they had mocked had just saved their entire unit. More than that, he had turned a potential massacre into a perfect victory. Something had changed, and everyone knew it. The first battle was over, but something much bigger was just beginning. Director Vor's communication crackled to life. Excellent work, unit. Especially you, Soldier Kim. David just nodded. Another day. Another battle. Nothing special. But everything had changed. The temporary camp glowed with a soft blue light. Alien technology created a protective bubble around them, keeping out the harsh winds of the unknown planet. Soldiers from different species sat in a rough circle, their bodies tired but alert after the recent battle. Jay-Wook noticed David sitting slightly apart from the others. The human seemed comfortable being alone, yet not isolated. He watched the conversations around him with calm eyes. Kraltex, still impressed by the recent battle, broke the silence. Kim, he said, his scaled head turning. Tell us something about humans. How did you learn to fight like that? A moment of quiet followed. The other soldiers leaned in, curiosity replacing their previous mockery. David paused. Then he began to speak. Humans survive, he said simply. It's what we do best. He told them about Earth, not the clean version from official reports, but the real story of human survival. He spoke about the planet's history, how humans had lived through ice ages, survived plagues, fought through countless wars, and still kept moving forward. We once had a time called the Great Depression, David explained. Millions of people lost everything. No money, no food. Entire families living in temporary camps made of wood and old car parts. Mictal looked confused. And they survived. David nodded. Not just survived. They rebuilt. They created new ways of living. They invented new technologies. They helped each other. He told them about World War II, how humans faced an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat, how ordinary people became heroes, how nations worked together when everything seemed lost. Our greatest strength, David said, is not our technology. It's our ability to adapt, to change, to find solutions when no solutions seem possible. The alien soldiers listened, their previous mockery completely forgotten. He spoke about space exploration, how humans reached the moon with computers less powerful than the smallest communication devices in this room, how they sent robots to other planets, how they dreamed of exploring places no one thought possible. We're a young species, David continued, but we learn fast. We don't accept impossible as an answer. Jay-Wook watched the others. Kraltex's scales had stopped shifting, a sign of deep concentration. Mictal's 4 arms were completely still. Shalara, the crystalline soldier, seemed to be absorbing every word. One story, David said, might help you understand. He told them about the Apollo 13 mission, how 3 astronauts were trapped in space with a broken spacecraft, how NASA engineers on Earth solved impossible problems using nothing but creativity and teamwork, how they used simple tools to create complex solutions. They had to build an air filter using cardboard, plastic bags, and duct tape, David explained. In space, with lives depending on them. The camp was completely silent now. That's humans, David said. We don't give up. We find a way. As the blue light of the protective shield continued to glow, the alien soldiers looked at David differently. No longer was he the joke of the unit. Now, he was something else, a symbol of unexpected potential. The training simulation room hummed with energy. Holographic displays flickered, showing complex battle scenarios. Most alien military units approached combat like a mathematical problem. Precise calculations, predictable strategies, logical movements. David Kim was different. Psychological warfare is not about weapons, he told the assembled soldiers. It's about understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves. Jae-wook watched carefully. After the previous battle and campfire stories, everyone paid attention when David spoke. The human stood in the center of the room, calm and steady, looking more like a teacher than a soldier. He began to explain how humans approached conflict. Humans don't just fight, David said. We make the enemy fight themselves. He shared examples from Earth's military history, stories of small groups defeating larger armies not through raw power, but through creativity and psychological manipulation. The Vietnam War became his first lesson, how a smaller, less equipped force defeated a technologically superior military by understanding human psychology. Guerrilla tactics, unexpected attacks, creating fear and uncertainty. Fear is a weapon, David explained, more powerful than any gun. Miktul raised one of his 4 hands. But isn't fear just emotion? David smiled. A rare thing. Emotion drives decisions. Decisions win wars. He talked about Sun Tzu, an ancient human military strategist. How winning a battle before it starts was the true art of war. How breaking the enemy's spirit matters more than breaking their bodies. The Confederation soldiers listened. These were not typical military teachings. This was something different. Look at the Trojan horse, David continued. One wooden horse changed an entire war. Humans understand that sometimes the most powerful weapon is an idea. He demonstrated with a training simulation, where other commanders would plan direct attacks. David created complex psychological traps. He showed how to make an enemy believe something that wasn't true, how to make them doubt their own strategies. Kraltex watched in amazement. The simulation showed David making the smaller force appear larger, making weak positions seem strong, creating illusions that confused and scattered the enemy. We humans are storytellers, David said. And in war, the best story wins. He explained how humans used misinformation, how they could make an enemy see 10 soldiers where only 2 existed, how they could make a simple radio broadcast sound like a massive invasion force. Technology is a tool, David explained, but understanding human psychology, that's the real weapon. The room was completely silent. These alien soldiers had seen hundreds of battles. They had fought across multiple star systems, but they had never seen warfare like this. Jae-wook realized something important. Humans didn't just fight wars. They played a different game entirely. Remember, David said as the simulation ended, war is won in the mind before it's won on the battlefield. The alien soldiers looked at each other. Something had changed. Their entire understanding of conflict was being rewritten. And at the center of that change stood one human. Calm, steady, unexpected. The ship's small meditation room was quiet. Soft blue light created shadows on the metallic walls. Jae-wook found David sitting alone, looking at a small metal object in his hand. It was old, worn, something personal. What is that? Jae-wook asked. David looked up. For a moment, something changed in his eyes. A darkness, a memory. A dog tag, he said simply. From my father. The story began to unfold. Not the official military record, not the clean version. The real story of how David Kim became who he was. His father had been a firefighter, a first responder who died saving people during a massive city disaster. David was only 12 years old when it happened. One moment, he had a normal life. The next, everything changed. Survival isn't just about fighting, David explained. It's about adapting, protecting what matters. He talked about growing up after losing his father. His mother worked 3 jobs. David took care of his younger sister. He learned to cook, to manage money, to protect his family. While other kids played games, he studied. While others complained, he solved problems. Kraltex and Michtel had joined them now. They listened carefully. David spoke about his neighborhood, a place where people helped each other, where communities came together when things got tough, where survival meant working as a team. Not because someone told them to, but because it was the right thing to do. Humans are not just individuals, he said. We are connected. We survive together. He shared stories of his school years, how he was smaller than other kids, how he learned to use his mind instead of his muscles, how he understood that intelligence was the real weapon. His military training came next, not the official version, the real story. David wasn't a natural soldier. He was a thinker, a problem solver. He studied psychology. He learned languages. He understood that true strength was about understanding, not just fighting. Every challenge is a lesson, he told them. Every problem has a solution. He talked about his first real mission, a disaster relief operation. Not a war, a rescue. How humans could turn destruction into hope. How they could rebuild when everything seemed lost. Jay-Wook saw something now. David wasn't just telling a story. He was showing them how humans thought, how they survived. My father always said, David continued, courage is not about being fearless. It's about doing what's right when everything is wrong. The alien soldiers were completely silent now. His journey wasn't about being the strongest. It was about being the most adaptable, the most determined, the one who never gave up. Humans are not perfect, David said. We make mistakes. We fail. But we learn. We grow. We keep moving forward. The metal dog tag gleamed in the blue light, a small piece of memory, a connection to everything he had lost, everything he had become. Jay-Wook realized something important. David wasn't just telling his story. He was showing them a different way of understanding survival, the human way. The ship shook like a broken toy. Alarms screamed. Red emergency lights painted everything in blood-like color. This was not just another battle. This was survival. The Nightmare Fleet had found them. These were the worst enemies in the galaxy. Machines that thought faster than living beings. Ships that could predict movement before it happened. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. No unit had ever survived a full Nightmare Fleet attack. Until now. David Kim stood at the tactical center. No panic. No fear. Just pure calculation. We have 17 minutes, he said. His voice cut through the chaos like a knife. 17 minutes to change everything. Jay-Wook looked at the holographic display. The situation was impossible. They were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded from all sides. Every standard military strategy said one thing: surrender. David said something different. We're going to turn their strength into their weakness, he announced. Most soldiers would have explained their plan. David just started moving. His hands flew across communication systems. His mind worked faster than the ship's computers. Kraltex watched in disbelief. The human was rewriting battle rules in real time. David used the ship's weakest points as strengths. He turned damaged sections into traps. He made broken systems look like opportunities. Where other commanders saw problems, he saw solutions. The Nightmare Fleet ships approached. Perfect, calculated, emotionless. Then David did something nobody expected. He didn't fight. He confused. Radio signals went out, but not normal signals. Signals that made no sense. Signals that looked like errors. Signals that made the machine intelligence question its own programming. Humans invented computer viruses, David said quietly. We understand how machines think. The first Nightmare Fleet ship hesitated, just for a moment. But in battle, a moment is everything. Michtel's 4 hands worked weapon systems, but he followed David's instructions perfectly. Not because he was ordered, but because he now understood the strategy. One ship turned, then another. The perfect machine formation started to break. David wasn't just fighting. He was teaching a lesson. Machines follow rules, he said. Humans break rules. The battle became a dance, a complex, impossible dance where human creativity fought against machine perfection. Jay-Wook realized something important. This wasn't just about winning a battle. This was about showing what humans could do. 17 minutes passed. The nightmare fleet was gone, not destroyed, confused, defeated in a way they could not understand. Silence filled the ship. Director Vor's communication crackled. "Explain," the director demanded. David's response was simple. "We survived." Around him, alien soldiers looked different. No more jokes. No more mockery. Just pure respect. Humans had just done the impossible. Again, the debriefing room was different now. Where once there had been mockery, now there was silence. Respect. Jay-Wook watched the alien commanders discuss David Kim. Not as a joke. Not as a minor soldier. But as something else entirely. "Humans are not what we thought," Director Vor said. His crystalline body shifted colors, a sign of deep thinking among his species. Kraltex, whose scales had once mocked humans, now spoke differently. "We were wrong," he admitted. The words came hard. Aliens did not like admitting mistakes. The reports from the Nightmare Fleet battle spread quickly, not just through their military, but across multiple star systems. Humans went from being a footnote to something else, a potential game changer. David sat quietly during the debriefing. No pride, no excitement, just calm understanding. The alien commanders reviewed the battle records. Every decision, every movement. They saw something they had never seen before. Humans didn't just fight. They reimagined fighting. Where other species saw limits, humans saw opportunities. Where machines followed perfect rules, humans created chaos. Where technology seemed fixed, humans found ways to change everything. Miktul reviewed the communication signals David had used. "It's not just technology," he said. "It's creativity. Humans turn problems into solutions." The commanders discussed human history, not the clean version, the real version. How a young species had done impossible things in just a few hundred years. How they had gone from simple tools to space exploration in a blink of galactic time. "They adapt faster than any species we've seen," one commander noted. Another added, "They learn faster. They change faster." David remained silent, but everyone watched him. He had become more than a soldier. He was a symbol of unexpected potential. Jay-Wook thought about all the stories David had shared. Survival stories. Stories of communities coming together. Stories of turning impossible situations into opportunities. The debriefing continued, but something had changed. Humans were no longer seen as a young, weak species. They were now viewed as something else. A wild card. An unpredictable force. "We need more humans in our military," Director Vor announced. The statement shocked everyone. Humans would be studied, recruited, understood, not as soldiers, but as a unique approach to survival. David still said nothing. He didn't need to. His actions had spoken louder than any words. Outside the debriefing room, the galaxy seemed different, larger, more complex, filled with possibilities nobody had seen before. Humans had entered the galactic stage, and nothing would be the same again. Jay-Wook looked at David, the human who had changed everything, who had shown that being different was not a weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Jay-Wook sat in his office, surrounded by historical records. His report on human capabilities had become a turning point, a document that reshaped how everyone understood warfare, survival, and potential. David Kim was no longer just a soldier. He had become a legend. More humans joined the Galactic Confederation's forces, but they were different from other recruits. They didn't just follow orders. They'd reimagined possibilities. Jay-Wook remembered the first time he truly understood humans. not as a soldier, but as something more. His report began with simple words. Humans are not a species. They are a force of nature. He documented everything. How humans turned challenges into opportunities. How they saw solutions where others saw dead ends. How they understood that survival was more than fighting. It was adapting, growing, changing. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humans. David had disappeared after the Nightmare Fleet battle. Some said he returned to Earth. Others believed he was on another mission. But his impact remained. Military academies across different planets now study human strategies. Not just military tactics, but human thinking. How they approached problems. How they created solutions. Krelltex, once a mocker of humans, now train new soldiers using human-inspired techniques. Creativity is a weapon, he would tell his students, words he learned from David. Miktul had written books about human psychology, how a small species from a single planet had changed galactic understanding of conflict, survival, and potential. The Confederation's database was filled with human stories, not just war stories, survival stories. Stories of communities coming together. Stories of turning impossible situations into opportunities. Jay-Wook looked at the dog tag David had shown him years ago. A small piece of metal that represented something much bigger. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were a symbol of hope, of unexpected potential, of the idea that limitations were just another problem waiting to be solved. The galaxy had changed, and humans were the reason. Not because they were the strongest, not because they had the best technology, but because they never stopped believing that something impossible could become possible. Jay-Wook finished writing his final report, a document that would be read by generations. Humans, he wrote, are not defined by their past. They are defined by their ability to create a different future. Outside his window, ships moved across the stars. Alien and human crews working together. Sharing knowledge, creating something new, a universe of possibilities. And at the center of it all, a simple idea that humans had always known. Survival is not about being the strongest. It's about being the most adaptable, the most creative, the most human.